Well, ahead of that, Israeli forces opened fire on crowds at aid centres in Gaza on Sunday, killing over 90 people across the Strip, according to the Gazan Health Ministry. However, the IDF spokesperson shared this video claiming that the Israeli army did not fire a single live bullet. It comes despite reports that around 1,000 people have been killed during shootings at aid distribution points since their launch only back in May. The video also shows Palestinians cheering and applauding the soldiers. The spokesperson added that claims of starvation and deliberately targeting people seeking aid were, in his words, Hamas propaganda. Well, let's cross live now to Palestinian lawyer from Human Rights Watch, Milena Ansari. You are most welcome. How would you describe the current situation on the ground in Gaza?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Well, the current situation on Gaza, based on the testimonies we hear from Palestinian civilians on the ground, is absolutely harrowing. And it hasn't stopped being harrowing and absolutely terrible the past more than year and a half, almost 2 years going in. But maybe I'll focus a little bit on the last video you mentioned about the humanitarian or the distribution centers or the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. You know, we've been looking at footage for weeks and weeks now, where Israeli-backed, US-supported aid distribution centers have been absolutely deadly for Palestinians. We're seeing, you know, children with skeleton bodies trying to run into aid distribution sites. We've seen elderly women, even young men also being shot by live gunfire in these aid distribution sites. But the bottom line that I want to emphasize here is the complete, you know, these aid distribution sites violate the most fundamental principle of humanitarian aid under international law, which is that humanitarian aid should be impartial. It should not be conditional. But what we're seeing in these US-American-backed distribution sites is basically Israel saying, we will decide which Palestinians will eat, what they will eat, and when they will eat. You know, if we compare them to the United Nations distribution sites, the GHF sites are located in areas that have been completely razed by Israeli forces and have been ethnically cleansed by Israeli forces from the Palestinian population. And to make it worse, these aid distribution sites are not only deadly, but they're not even speaking to the starvation and famine that is currently eating up the Gaza Strip.
Okay.
We've just heard from the United Nations about children dying still from dehydration, malnutrition, and famine because Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war. So these
Just on what Israel is saying, though, the IDF posted a video late on Sunday showcasing that they ostensibly don't target civilians and that Gazans are happy to get aid. They allege Hamas steals supplies and uses the crowds to get closer to attack the Israeli military. Is that happening?
You know, this is, again, emphasis on the many videos we have seen the past weeks. What we have seen and what we speak to witnesses on the ground is that Israeli forces are gunning down starving Palestinians. This one video you're speaking of that is posted by the Israeli military itself should be questioned. And this is what we're doing. We're questioning it. We're not taking it as a given. If Israeli forces and the Israeli military truly cared about starving Palestinians, they would see the hundreds in that video who are running into one single truck of aid. You know, if Israel cares about civilians in Gaza, they would open up all border crossings in order to facilitate unfettered humanitarian aid getting into Gaza. The video we are seeing, it doesn't show water bottles, it doesn't show actual food being taken, it doesn't show fuel being entering in the Gaza Strip. So with this limited video, we should not have a limited look at it, but look at the broader context and the broader numbers from UN agencies, from international humanitarian organizations who know what they're talking about.
Yeah, just on the UN, because UNRWA also mentioned something I'd like to get your take on. It says that it has enough food in its warehouses for all the population of Gaza for at least 3 months. What needs to be done, and how does this aid get in?
Yeah, and this is a really important point. Thank you for flagging it. Human Rights Watch, we were in Al Arish, Egypt. We were on the border between Rafah and northern Sinai. And we saw these 100 trucks just waiting in line. And when we asked international organizations and UN staff, why are these trucks not entering? The simple answer was Israel is blocking this aid from entering, either by really bizarre and vague allegations of dual use, like dates, the fruit dates being banned from entering because it's dual use, or portable potties being banned from entering because of dual use. So the easiest way to understand how these aids can go inside Gaza is by Israel opening the Rafah border for goods and truckloads of aid coming in. But it's also about opening the borders in the north, in the south, all the borders. Why is Israel still restricting the humanitarian aid that's coming in the Gaza Strip?
Does that border include Egypt as well?
Exactly. There needs to be corridors. Even if we don't want any other country to be sending aid to Gaza, it's as simple as the West Bank, just a few kilometers away from the Gaza Strip. And Israel is also refusing to allow Palestinians in the West Bank to send truckloads of humanitarian aid to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. So when we talk about, discrimination, when we talk about apartheid, when we talk about extermination and acts of genocide, this is what we're seeing exactly in the simple incidents of the aid distribution centers. Let me be clear, this is not collateral damage. The killings on these aid distribution sites is a deliberate strategy to create conditions of life calculated to bring about the physical destruction of half of the population in the Gaza Strip.
Okay.
These are acts of genocide.
The thoughts of Palestinian lawyer, Human Rights Watch, Middle East researcher Milena Ansari. Thank you very much for your take today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.